the same time. We're here on Zoom. Well, people will join us as we proceed. But Aya is a microbiologist registered with the Royal Society of Biology as a chartered biologist and a qualified person. He's going to explain to us what that means. He has worked in pharmaceuticals, especially biopharmaceuticals, for over 20 years and is a recognized expert in Europe on advanced biological therapies. Currently, he works at Evelo Biosciences, one of the many biotech firms involved in clinical trials for COVID-19 therapy. Please welcome to the webinar. Welcome. So, tell us.
Hello. Yeah, nice to be here.
Everything that I just read, like something about therapies. What was it again that I said you were going to explain? What does it mean to be a qualified person? Can you explain? Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Now.
Perfect. Okay. So, yeah, you just read the fact that. So I am a microbiologist. That is how I started years ago in Lagos. My journey in science. Or I should say my professional journey in science. At the final year of my study, I decided we had a module on biotechnology, and it just kind of struck me that, yep, that's what I want to do. It felt like that was going to be the future. It felt like it was one of those images I had in my mind that it gave us the impression, well, it was going to allow us to do whatever it is we could conceive. So almost like, as long as you can imagine it, you can do it, because biotechnology meant that we could harness the power of DNA, genes, and those kind of things to just do limitless things. So I thought, yep, I want to do that. That sounds interesting. So, came over to UK and did a master's in biotech and promptly got a job with a company called British Biotech, and that started my journey. Worked through a number of sites, spent most of my life in biotech. I strayed into what you would call traditional pharmaceuticals. So I worked for Glaxo for about 3 years, which wasn't particularly nice, but that's just my experience. It's a great company, but I didn't enjoy it there. Moved back into biotech, and lots of parts of my life I've worked in cell and gene therapy. I currently work for a biotech firm based in Boston, although I'm UK based, but the company's based in Boston. So I'm sort of living the biotech dream. In the UK, you get to a certain point. Within Europe, you get to a point where when your knowledge of the manufacture of medicines and the regulations around medicines is to a point where you can go for a certification as a qualified person, which is what I am. And also when the Royal Society of Biology, also in the UK, recognize your achievements as a biologist, they invite you for chartership or chartered status. So I applied for that some time ago. You have to have 1 or 2 people vouch for the fact that you're reasonably good, and they gave that to me. So I am a chartered biologist and also a qualified person and a microbiologist. So, but yeah, lots of ologies, but it just means I'm doing what I'm doing. I've been doing it for a while.
All the science stuff that I just did not want to, do it, when I was in school. So it's good that somebody, excels in it, right?
Well, yeah, I think sometimes it's unfortunate because a lot of science people generally are very enthusiastic about science, and they understand their science, but they have a problem with transferring that knowledge because sometimes the enthusiasm goes beyond their ability to explain things. One thing I try to do is I try and explain things in as simple a way as possible. So hopefully in the course of this conversation, I might break things down, and it's not because I'm not trying to be patronizing. I'm just trying to get people to understand what it is I'm saying. So if I use examples that people think is like, of course I knew that, I do apologize, but I just want to make sure that people understand.
Okay, so what are some of the lessons that we can learn from you, as a microbiologist, as a qualified person? If somebody's watching right now and, yep, maybe before we get into, the vaccines and all the stuff you want to talk about COVID, because you're here today as one of our stories that matter, as a guest on our stories that matter. What are
Okay.
some of the stories that you can tell us, or what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way that you want to pass on to, maybe a young person who is coming up, or maybe someone who is trying to change jobs? What are some of the things that we can learn?
Okay, so a number of things. First of all, if you approach anything from the mindset of I can't, or this is really difficult, it will be difficult and you won't be able to do it. And one of the things we didn't talk about is I'm also a Christian, and it's trying, so I balance the Christian with the science, and I'll try not to go overboard on that. But it's about your understanding that I can do this. I'll tell a little story, hopefully not too long. When I was in school, I was not one of those who, I don't tell my kids, by the way, that I always came first, because I used to always come second, because I was just this chap who was always first. I could just, whatever I did, he was always first. And one day my dad had a chat with me and said, does he have two heads? And I said, no. Four eyes? I said, no. I said, he's a regular.
That's a
And he said to me,
Nigerian
he's a
dad.
regular human being, isn't he? And I said, yes, he is a regular human being. He said, I think in your mind, you've told yourself you can't beat him. So at least try once. So you can say to yourself, I beat him at least once. So I think my mistake was I told myself I'll try once to beat him at least once. The following year, I did beat him, and was the only one time I did beat him. I probably should have said to myself, I'll beat him every single time. So relating that, but I didn't. I just said once, and I did the once. But relating that back, if you what you can conceive in your mind, you can do. Now there might be difficulties, there might be issues, but just go ahead anyway. I remember, I came back to the UK with a degree from Nigeria, and everybody told me you won't get a job with a degree from Nigeria because everyone's going to think, what's that about? But I did get a job as a microbiologist with my Nigerian degree. So that's the first thing. Don't believe what people tell you, research it yourself. The other thing is, and I think you have to try, it's kind of almost relevant to what's going on now. Again, I don't want to divert into that, but if I got used to being the only Black person everywhere I went. And it went beyond that. I recognized the fact that it wasn't about my color, it was about, as my father would say, what's in my head. I'm not there because they like my face. I'm not there because they don't like my face. I'm simply there because they recognize that this guy has something to deliver. So make yourself, don't be limited by what's around. There are not very many chartered biologists who are Black in the UK. There's certainly not very many QPs who are Black in the UK. And every time I wanted to do it, people were like, oh gosh, but do you think this is possible? And I always, so don't let anyone limit you, even if it's your parents. Don't let them limit you. Just tell yourself, someone else is doing it, I can do it too.
Absolutely. And so I'm so glad you brought that up. Like you were used to being the only Black, or at least one of the few Blacks around. I'm sure that you've had meetings where you were the only Black face there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you say then? How did you get to that point where you were so confident? I know you said don't belittle yourself, but what else? Like what was yourself? What motivated you?
Sorry.
What made you, what motivated you? What made you, walk into a place and say, you know what, you don't have to like me, but you can like what I'm bringing to the table? Miwa.
Okay, so part of it also, in a funny sort of way, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Oh, you can. Okay, okay, you can. A lot of it is linked to our education in Nigeria, surprisingly. In Nigeria, you didn't have very many textbooks, and a lot of what you were taught, if you got into one textbook in the library, you sort of had to grab it and memorize it, what you had, because that was the one chance you had to get the book, at least for my courses. I'm not sure about other courses. And so I had a lot of information. Now, what I wasn't taught was how to utilize that information. And so I would go into an interview and I knew my stuff. I knew you asked me about anything, I could tell you because I'd memorized it to pass exams. Now, when in my very first job, I remember going into a meeting and we were talking about a particular bacteria. Actually, it was a yeast. And they were like, oh, let's go and get the manual to find out about the characteristics of that yeast. And I'm like, hold on a sec, we don't need a manual. I know this stuff. So I kind of just reeled out all the characteristics of that yeast. And collectively, the whole room kind of looked at me like, wow, where'd you guys get this guy from? He's just amazing. And that kind of made me think, well, you know what? I know something. But what actually happened afterwards was they're then using the information I gave them to come up with ideas, which was blowing me away because I wasn't taught to implement those. I was just taught to have information. I didn't know how to apply that knowledge. And so in a sense, I didn't let them know that I was, in awe of what they were doing, because they already demonstrated and from that very first meeting, which happened about the first week of my first job, I kind of picked that
Mm-hmm.
up and thought, well, you know what? There's stuff that I know that they don't know, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to respect me for that, and I'm just going to continue with that. So yeah, so that's just what it was.
Okay. So
Mhm.
basically, whatever it is that you do, get some mastery in that thing, right?
Yes,
That would
absolutely,
separate you, so
absolutely.
it doesn't matter what doesn't matter what you do or who you are. It might just be, if you're a teacher, be the best teacher. If you're whatever, just get some mastery and some knowledge behind it. Is
Totally,
would you
totally
agree?
correct. I mean, I'll give another sort of non-science example, not non-specific example, but it was only recently, not too long ago, certainly last 10, 15 years, where a particular football club or soccer, depending where you're from, in the UK said they would not have black players in their team. And now it's impossible. In fact, I don't think there's any Premiership team that doesn't have black players. Even that particular team have lots of black players. The thing is, it's not about you, it's about what you have and what you can bring. And if they need success because they want success, they would recruit you regardless. So look beyond that. I mean, one of the things I will also say actually that has helped me is that when we were coming back to the UK, oh sorry, I was born in the UK. We're going back to Nigeria. We adopted Nigerian names, or my father gave us Nigerian names. I mean, it wasn't my choice, but we did. And when you get my CV and you see Ayo Ogunsolu, you're not expecting a white guy to show up. So I never went into those rooms expecting to be treated any different, because I expect that by the time you're inviting me for an interview, you've gone past that. So I didn't go in feeling like, okay, I've got to now address this black thing. How do I behave? I just
Mhm.
went in there knowing that they knew already. I mean, if I showed up and they said, "Oh my gosh, you're black," that would have maybe been different. But yeah, I didn't get that. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's good.
expected
That's
to think
good.
that I was.
Yeah, hopefully they would know that that name Ogunsolu doesn't sound like
I hope they're not exposing the Caucasian. I would not.
you're
I
not
would
French
not
or
have thought.
anything, right?
No, no,
Okay.
no. Well, I guess that could
Well,
be.
I guess you could be French because one of my students thought I was French at one point.
Oh,
So
okay.
let's move on to one of. Is there any other lessons you want to share with us before we move on to COVID?
No, I mean, I think we've sort of just said it. I just think whatever dreams you have, just go for it. Don't let anyone tell you you can't do it, and be single-minded and focused on that. So I tell people from a career point of view, I have done everything I wanted to do. I wanted to be a microbiologist, I have become that. I wanted to work in biotech, I have done that. When I got into biotech, I wanted to be a qualified person, I have done that. When I found out that to be recognized within the professional body was to become a chartered biologist, I went for that, and I have also done that. So I think just go for it regardless.
Okay, so but meanwhile, let me ask you this though. So you have done that, you've
Uh-huh.
done that, you've done that. It means that you actually interviewed for positions, you applied for things, you were
Uh-huh.
proactive, and this thing didn't just come to you.
Oh, no,
You
no, no, no.
Okay, so tell us about that. Tell us about what do you need to do to move to the next level in whatever. It doesn't have to be a science field, but in
Okay.
any field that you're in.
Okay, so the key thing, and I would suggest the key thing is you need to understand how your industry works. So I knew, if you look at the sciences, I would go back to where I'm comfortable with, a lot of the advancements we had, we advanced a lot in the physics and the engineering and the mathematical sciences. We had done so much in the chemical sciences. It was the turn for biology. I just knew it was. But the biggest thing with biology was we needed to crack one thing, and that was DNA. And when the DNA was mapped and we understood DNA, that was like, it was almost like the Tower of Babel moment. It was a case of now anything we imagined we could do, we could actually do. At least it was possible. But the thing was, I could have stayed at being a microbiologist, work in the hospital, treat samples, treat poo samples, urine samples, and work in pathology. But I wanted to work in what was the forefront, because I understood that the future of biology was within biotech. So to move ahead in your career, whatever it is you do, look at what's trending. I'm sure you would know what it is. And it might look like something that not a lot of people are in, or it might even be difficult, but go for it anyway. I mean, I would admit to one thing. I originally wanted to study medicine, and I wanted to be a brain surgeon. And then I remember reading up about the brain, and I picked up this book, and it said, this part of the brain, we don't know much about it. That part of the brain, we don't know much about it. This, about 90% of the brain, we didn't know anything about. And I thought, you know what, not doing that. Well, actually, what I should have done was seen that as an opportunity, because there was, I just
Mm-hmm.
thought, if we don't know anything about it, what do I want to go and do that for? Which
Yeah.
was not the right way to think. But so the thing is, yes, there might be few people in that area. It might be new and upcoming, but go for it, because if you know that that's the future, then once you have the skills, inevitably people would want you.
Excellent. Thank you much. So now
Yeah.
going to this COVID-19. Okay.
Yes.
Going to COVID-19. What are, we've heard so many things about vaccines that are coming out, or vaccines that are going to, cause communities to be extinguished. All kinds of
Mhm.
stuff has come out about vaccines, vaccinations, about this. Could you tell us what exactly, is going on from your purview?
Okay, so gosh, I could probably just talk till the end of this interview on just that alone. The simple thing is this, or the very straightforward thing is this. I'm sure lots of people have heard of, you listen to the news and they said, oh, there's a new discovery about X and a new discovery about Y. And you've wondered 10 years later when you've remembered it. So where is that new discovery on this? Or where is that new discovery on that? The thing is, the pharmaceutical industry is very, very highly regulated. And there are processes involved in getting a medicine from translating something from what you have a discovery on the bench to a blockbuster on the market or a market product. And the
Mhm.
processes are such that there is so much rigor and scrutiny from the regulatory authorities, and even what you might call general members of the public in that process, that when I hear people talk about, oh, there's going to be a vaccine and somebody's going to put something in it that's going to cause you to be a certain way, I just kind of think you don't understand how manufacture of medicines work. Because if you did, there is just no way a lot of the things that people are talking about, forget what you see in the movies where somebody goes in, drops something into a vat, and then everyone gets infected with something. That is just not possible. It's just literally not possible. Not on a mass scale anyway, not on the scale that people are talking about.
Okay, so what's that process? What and where are we in the process when it comes to COVID-19?
Okay, so where we are, so the first thing, okay, two things. So two questions there. The first thing is, I'll answer the second one, the first one first. In terms of the process, when you have a discovery, you then you have to, let's assume you have it, you get it to the point where you feel I can make a product out of this. Then you have to go through clinical trial phases, and I'm sure most people have heard about clinical trials. They're in effect, there are four phases of a trial. The first phase is just to demonstrate that it's safe. You don't forget about whether it works or not, just demonstrate that it's safe. So for
Mm,
that phase, you're looking for anything between 20 to 50 people who you would either inject or you would give whatever the medication you have, and you would demonstrate that it's not going to kill them.
mhm,
And even before you even do that, you have to submit a dossier to the regulators. So my company is currently involved in, I mean, I've spent the last 2 or 3 weeks reviewing dossiers. I'm talking 150 pages of documents just explaining what the drug is and how we're going to
mhm,
manufacture it and how we've sourced every material that goes into the manufacture of that drug. This is a comprehensive dossier. So it's not something
mhm,
you just do. I mean, you can't just do, it's not something you can do in your backyard. Now, when you get that,
mhm,
then you have to you submit it to the authorities. So if you're in the US, it will go to the FDA. If you're in Nigeria,
mhm,
it would be NAFDAC. In the UK, it'd be the MHRA. They would then review it, and they'll come back to you with gazillions of questions. So if let's assume you get the authorization to then carry out that trial, every drug that you manufacture has to be manufactured to exacting standards. Those standards again would have been reviewed, and even then you have to have a license to carry out that manufacturing. So you can't just build something because you're a multi-billionaire. Oh, I'm just going to build a facility and start making medicines. It's not like that. I can be a multi-billionaire and decide to start selling TVs. All I need to do is, buy them from China, sell them very expensive somewhere else. It doesn't
mhm.
work like that with medicines. You build your facility, it has to be approved before you can start to sell medicines.
Okay,
In what I
well,
would,
hold on a minute. So first of all, there's a dossier that
yes,
basically you submit to the organization who is in charge of medicines, FDA
exactly.
for us,
Yes,
and
exactly.
and um
In
and
the it, Go
once
on.
that is approved,
Uh-huh.
then you guys go to step two. Is that what it is?
Yes, yeah. Now you go to step two, which is actual manufacture of the drug, and so you go, yeah. So you go to step two, which is manufacturing the drug. Now to do that, you have to go through another comprehensive phase of looking for people who can manufacture the drug, who have also been approved by the regulators. So you have approval to carry out a trial. The manufacturer of your drug also has to have approvals separate from you to carry out those trials. If that doesn't happen, if they can't do that or demonstrate that, then it won't happen. So this, admittedly, I am talking about what happens in what you might call regulated societies. So I guess if you not as strict, you might get away with stuff. But again, it's highly unlikely. But moving forward, so you get into what is phase one. Like I said, you're doing safety checks, just checking that when I manufacture my drug. So you've gone past manufacturing, you've now made your drugs. You're testing within 20 to 30 people to just see that when they get it, they don't die. I don't know, it probably didn't, I don't know how widespread this information was, but there was a trial that happened in the UK, maybe about 20-ish, maybe 15 years ago, where they didn't follow the instructions on the dossier that was submitted and approved. And because the nurses were trying to like shortcut the process, instead of giving a stepwise increase in doses, they just went straight to the maximum dose and whacked the whole thing into the patients. And of course, the patients, well, not of course, but the patients overreacted and that trial was pulled. And that's because they didn't follow the very strict instructions. Because when you're dealing with a new entity, you know nothing about it. You don't know how people are going to react to it. So that's phase one. Then phase two. If you go past phase one, again, when you finish at that phase, you submit all the findings to the regulators. They approve it. You then go into phase two. In phase two, now you're testing for efficacy. Does it actually work? Now, if you're a clever company, in your phase one, you'd have gotten some of your volunteers will be people who were affected by whatever indication it is you're trying to treat. So you would have an idea that it would work. So by the time you're going into phase two, you already know it's going to work, but you're just trying to demonstrate it in a larger population. So in phase two, you're now looking at anything between 100 and 500 people in different sort of categories. So that's when you look for, you will look for women, men, not children, because you're not allowed trials on children, various categories, so white, black, Asian, Chinese, whatever it is, to just demonstrate efficacy. So that's the next stage. If you go past that stage and you demonstrated, this actually works, then you go into phase three. Now in phase three, you're doing pretty much the same thing as safety and efficacy combined, but with a larger audience. So now you're looking into thousands of patients, or thousands of subjects, I should say. And it's only at the end of that, when you've demonstrated efficacy and safety in a large population, that you will get a license to manufacture for sale. And saying this, it even to bring on a new medicine into the market, it has to be better than what is currently on the market. So if there's something already there and your drug just proves to be just as good as, you won't get an authorization to sell it. They won't let you because there's no point. What value are you bringing? It has to be better than what's on the market in some way or the other. So if what's on the market, say what's on the market is an injection and you're coming with a tablet which do the exact same thing and it's just as efficacious, you probably will get a license for that because of the ease of administration. So that's the advantage it has. But if I'm coming in with an injection that will do exactly the same thing as the previous injection, I'm not going. They won't give you a license because they'll simply tell you it's not better than what's currently there.
Okay, and so this sounds like a tedious process and a lengthy process. So that explains probably why we're not getting this COVID vaccines out the way we think.
Exactly. Now, even with the fast track that the FDA and the European Medicines Agency have promised, I mean, we submitted a dossier to the FDA for a COVID trial 2 weeks ago. They reviewed it quickly by FDA. They give you 90 days. The way it works, when you submit your dossier, you get 90 days. If you don't hear from them in 90 days, you can actually start your trial. So they will respond to you. And 9 out of 10 times, they tend to respond to you on the 89th day. So when you submit a dossier, you're not expecting them to come back to you within a week. But even with this fast track, it still took them 2 weeks to review the dossier. Because this is the thing, especially take America where you're at. No matter how much we're trying to do to try and help society, if the FDA allows a drug to go on the market and that market harms people, guess what will happen? You'll be sued. Exactly. So you can't say, oh, but I was trying to save humanity. I was trying to help you guys. No. So it still has to go through rigor. Yes, they had to work through the weekend. They had to work late at night because, especially in the US and in Europe, they've been given instructions by the relative governments that they should fast track the reviews of these things, but it's still taking that long. We submitted our dossier also to the UK 2 weeks ago. We're still waiting on the response from them. Okay, yes, they've approved our drug, but there are 4 drugs in the trial, so we're waiting for them to review the other 3. So and that's quick. I mean, 2 weeks is that's Usain Bolt type review. I mean, it's even quicker than Usain Bolt when you compare 2 weeks to like 3 months. But we have to go through the process. So when I hear these conspiracy theories about, somebody is going to just build a facility, manufacture mass manufactured vaccines, inject people, and either exterminate them or make them sterile, it's laughable
Well,
to a degree. It
but
really is.
wait, but we have rogue countries though.
Uh huh.
We have
You're
rogue
correct.
countries who can
Uh huh.
do who don't come under the umbrella of the ones that you've mentioned, who probably can
Correct.
do whatever they want, right?
Uh huh.
What do you have to say about China? Recently said that they do have a vaccine. Is it already out or is it coming out next sometime soon? I think it's already out or something. I can't. What did you hear from China?
Well, this is the thing. So yeah, I did hear a rumor that China claimed to have something out. Now this is the other bit of the regulation again. You cannot just go in regulated countries like in Europe and America and Japan. You cannot. So let me use Europe because Europe is where I work. When
Mhm.
you're importing the drug, so I'm a qualified person. What that means is every drug that's sold in Europe has to have been signed off by a qualified person. We call them QPs because qualified person is a bit of a mouthful. Has to be
Mhm.
signed off by a QP. Now, when you import any drug into if my company imports that drug from China, I as the QP who is signing the importation, who's permitting that to happen, what I will do is, first of all, I would do exactly what the regulators would do. So I would request a dossier on that drug, review it
Mhm.
myself. When the drug is then imported, prior to its administration, the tests that are demonstrated, all the tests that have been carried out in the laboratories to confirm that that drug is what it is, would be
Mhm.
repeated, and I would have to sign it off. In addition to
Okay.
that, there is a reasonable chance I would have had to have gone to China, audited that facility to ensure that it actually exists and it meets the standards of my country, or say in my case, Europe, before importation even happens. So
Okay.
it will take time. It's not just a case of
Okay.
they've manufactured it, we're just going to go and buy it.
Okay. So it's not like China says, okay, we have the vaccine and then we're all just going to buy it. It still has to go through a
Not going to
process
happen.
in the countries. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes people feel
Exactly.
a little bit better. It's not like you can just go and buy it.
No. Well, I mean, you can if you want. You can choose to go and buy it for yourself. So you can go to China, buy
Oh,
it for yourself, and inject
okay.
yourself. But
Oh,
you can't buy it mass produce, you can't mass purchase and sell. Not in regulated markets anyway. Like you said, rogue countries exist, and you might be able to do that. But where you have regulations for medicines, which actually, regardless of what people say about WHO, are also enforced by the WHO, you cannot just do that. It's not possible for that to happen.
oh no, we listen to WHO. There's only that yeah. WHO is good.
Yeah,
Only one person is against WHO, and we will not mention names.
no, of
So,
course.
now vaccine, but where are we with COVID-19 vaccination? Do you know? Is there a company that's about to reveal that they already have one? Is there two things? So vaccination, that's
Mhm,
to prevent,
mhm,
and treatment. Do we have
mhm.
those two anywhere in the world? Well, apart from China.
Well, yeah. So apart from China, and I need to I haven't actually read up on that because I will admit I just thought, yeah, whatever, and just dismissed it. But there are, as at last count, as at last Friday, so just yesterday, there were 843 trials on COVID-19
Wow.
going on as we speak. And I
Wow.
suspect between then and Monday, because my company is expecting, we're expecting two trials to be approved. So by Monday, you could have 800, at least 845. So it's increasing. Everyone is trying to get a drug on the market for COVID-19. Now, there are two approaches. I mean, the most common approach is a vaccination approach, which is, I guess, it's ultimately what you're trying to do is get your body to a point where it's sensitized enough to be able to recognize the presence of the virus and deal with it before it causes damage.
Mm,
What my company is doing is more treatment. So what we're doing, and this is why I explained slightly about the way COVID-19, the virus itself works. Now, this
mhm,
is again, like I said to you at the beginning, my trying to explain this in the way that I do is not, I'm not trying to be patronizing, it's just trying to let people understand how it works. So imagine you live in a single room and there are 10 of you in that room, and a thief breaks into that room, and all 10 of you have AK-47s, and we all whisper to one another very quietly in the, while the thief is sort of trying to look for stuff without putting on the light. There's a thief in the house. All 10 of us get our COVID-19, get our AK-47 and start shooting. in the hope that we will kill that virus. Now, what's going to happen is not only which you will probably kill that virus, but I suspect you probably end up killing some of the people in the room as well. Now, what happens when, and that's very similar, the easiest way to explain what happens with COVID-19, the virus in itself is not what causes the disease, it's the presence of the virus. Now, your body recognizes, I've got a virus here, I don't want it here. Unfortunately, what it does, it overreacts to the presence of that virus and causes what I tell people to Google it if you want better understanding. It causes what I call a cytokine storm. So it's CYTOKINE, a cytokine storm. And what effectively happens is your body starts to attack yourself. So all the things you see, the respiratory issues that people have and everything else, all the complications is actually because your body is trying to defend itself, it overreacts and attacks itself. And so what our drug is trying to do is suppress that overreaction so that what you get is a regulated standard reaction to any regular viral infection, and then your body will take care of it. Because the body will actually, whether it's vaccination or whether it's a treatment, it's ultimately your body that's going to do the work. The drug might, especially when it comes to infections, it's your body ultimately that does it. It's very rare. I mean, antibiotics, yes, would tend to attack bacteria and would kill bacteria. But with vaccination, what we're doing is getting your body to be able to recognize that the presence of an infection and react quickly enough to cause it from causing damage. So yeah, so that's what we have.
Is the body overreacting because the virus is new? I mean, because we have like the flu virus that's been around for a while. Does that make sense? Was it overreacted because that's new to the body? It's a stranger?
Yes and no. So it's actually, the overreaction is part of the characteristics. It's part of it's just one of the things that makes the virus, if you use the word, as deadly as it is. So it's in the nature of that virus, it causes the body to overreact, or because of the characteristics of that virus, the body reacts the way it does. And I don't want to go too much into the science because it would just.
Okay. So the newness really doesn't impact anything.
No, it's not so much the newness, no, because it's more just the characteristics of that virus itself.
Okay, so I thought, because look, I'm gonna press you on that, because I thought the reason why we don't have immunity to this virus is because we don't have the antibodies. It's new to us.
Okay, so yeah. Okay,
you can correct me, but that's
no, you're correct. No, okay. No, I apologize. It wasn't. You're correct. There is some fact in that. When your body, when an infection is new to the body, your reaction time will be a lot slower. And that is the whole point of vaccination. So what vaccination does, especially vaccination against infectious agents, what we do is we teach the body to be able to recognize that infection very quickly. So you say it's a virus, you can either inject people with what they call a live attenuated virus. So it's a live virus, so the same coronavirus, but you've weakened it. You understand it enough to be able to inject people with it so that it won't cause an infection, but the body will still recognize it. So eventually you inject your body with that, your body builds then antibodies to it, or and other mechanisms that affect or help you with fighting infectious diseases. And so when you are faced with the real thing, it will react in the same way and think, oh, I know who you are. You're not a good thing, so I'm just going to get you. So that's the one way. The other way to do it for viruses that are maybe pretty dangerous, maybe you won't use live attenuated viruses. You would use dead viruses. So they'll be dead to all intents and purposes. Well, it depends on whether you can argue whether a virus is living or not, but that's a separate issue. But they'll be dead, and you would then inject that into you inject that into people, and your body would then be able to respond to it quicker when it's faced with that same infectious agent again. So there is a degree of correctness in what you said, in that yes, if one of the reasons why this is happening is because it's new, and so the body hasn't. But then the body is just a remarkable machine, and to have something to this level of the kind of destruction that it's caused is partly yes, partly due to the fact that it's new. But I think what would have happened very, very quickly is you would have had you would have built immunity or resistance to it. And actually, I was reading just today, funny enough, that the biggest concern that we now have with COVID-19 is not people who get infected and demonstrate disease, but apparently, I think it said the statistics are that 87% of people are asymptomatic. So they have the virus, but they haven't gone to develop disease because your body has recognized it quick enough. So, and has decided, you know what, and hasn't, and most importantly, hasn't overreacted.
Mm.
So one of the
How did
trials
that
actually,
happen?
see, and this is the thing, and this is when I tell people why biology is different from chemistry or physics, or even mathematics. In mathematics, no matter how many ways you play it, if you add 2 to 2, you would end up with 4. It's always
Mm.
going to happen. In chemistry, you
Mm.
have 2 molecules of hydrogen, 1 of oxygen. You would always get water. It doesn't matter what
Mm.
it is. Biology is different because biology. How many times have you read where, say, they interviewed somebody, the oldest man in the world? You know, he's 110. So let's go and interview him. So we interview him. He says, "Oh, well, you know, I gave up smoking when I was 75. I gave up drinking when I was 85,
Mm.
and that kind of." And you think, really? And yet there's some people who don't even smoke, but they just work in an environment where they smoke, and
Mm.
they die of lung cancer.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
Exactly, but that's because the body is not as simple. The body is it's a mixture of multiple systems, as it were. So you react differently in a way, and so that's why sometimes, I mean, the way medicine is going, we're going into the area or the purview of personalized medicine. So the days of mass production of paracetamol are slowly coming to an end. So what would happen? Well, the vision of biotechnology is you would go into your GP or your physician, you would say what your issue is, and there and then we would have. Now this is long term. I mean, when I say long term, it might be 50 years, but then it might be 15, where we would have miniature factories which have been already been licensed, and there and then you will be manufacture the drug that will be specific for you. So you'll be
I
walking
love
away with.
biotech.
But yeah, I mean that's why I love it too. If I
You
if I
guys
died
talk
and came
about
back,
stuff.
if I died and come back, I would be a biotechnologist. In fact, I would like
Yeah.
to come back in 50 years' time because I feel like those guys are going to have so much fun. It's untrue. Um, so you're going to
Okay.
be having
So
personalized medicine. Sorry, I'm
I'm
digressing.
sorry. I want to.
It's okay.
We have some questions, but before we take the questions, you wanted to address some social media um, COVID-19 myths. That's just
Ah,
that's pervasive. So, which one do you want to tackle first?
I'm not even. It's because there is so many, and I've just decided to turn a blind ear to most of them. So, but I think most of them have now been debunked. I think, and I hope. So there
Okay.
was a time when people were talking about, oh, you can drink some vinegar or something, and that was going to get rid of it. Or you can, and sometimes I think if you stopped and just think about what people are telling you, this is a virus. We're told it's a respiratory virus. So what's swallowing anything into your stomach going to do with a respiratory virus? If you're going to kill the virus, it's not causing damage in your digestive system. It's causing it up in your respiratory area. So the thought that
Ah.
you'll drink some sort of acid that would kill the virus in your tummy, well, your tummy is already acidic. If you're going to need any acid to kill the virus, it's going to be already done by your body. So that was just one. Or drinking hot water. Oh, there was one about because of the heat. So it wasn't going
Yes.
to get
Yes.
in the
About the
right.
heat.
And I remember saying to people, well,
Even our president said something about that. He said that we should radiate heat in our bodies.
yes. Well, see, okay. In fairness, the one thing I would say in fairness is somebody may have found somewhere where one virus. Don't remember what I said about biological systems. They don't always
Hmm.
act the same. So one person may have demonstrated it with one person and said, "Oh my gosh, this person was exposed to heat." And they got rid of the virus. Remember what I said, and that's the reason why. Going back to what I was saying about trials, when you're in phase 3, you have to use different type of people, like old, young, Chinese, different races, ethnicities, all manner of, because you want to be able to demonstrate that regardless of who you are, regardless of how your system is, this medicine would work. And so a lot of those have happened because there's been what I call a small scale trial. So they've tried it on one person. Maybe one
Mm.
person took the quinine or hydroquinone, whatever it was, and it worked on that one person. We thought, great, that's it, that's going to work. Well, no, you haven't carried trials out. It may have worked on that one person, but it may not work on other people. So, I mean, and if you read, I know most people don't read the package inserts that come with their medicines, but I remember famously once my mother having an argument with my GP, with her doctor, because she was prescribed something and she said, if this doesn't work on Black people, to which my GP, her doctor was like, where did you read that? She said, in that paper that's in the package. And she brought it out, and my mother was a teacher, got her glasses on, she had highlighted it, and she insisted on the change of medicine. And even I was sitting there thinking, Mom, please don't embarrass me. But she was correct. She was correct. In the trials, it was demonstrated that for Black people, that medicine didn't work as well. And they gave her one which, well, they didn't talk about the ethnicity, so she didn't really know whether it worked or not.
Wow, well, it's okay. That's something that we should all, I mean, that's something you can share and tell us that we should all read
Oh, yes, please.
the
Yeah, the package
package.
information leaflet.
Yeah.
It's not there to
Yeah.
make sure to ensure that your medicine gets home safe. It's not there to insulate the medicine from breakage. You're really supposed to read it. It's not an installation thing. It's not an Amazon package that's come so you prevent it from breaking. No, you're really supposed to read it. I know most people don't, but hey, you really should.
You really should. Okay, so are you ready to take a few questions?
Yes, I will try my best.
Although you never did tell us a timeline for release for any of this 845.
Because there isn't one.
There is no projection.
No.
No. Wow.
No. So if you hear anything about a vaccine coming out in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that's not true. Because don't forget the other thing I said. Even if you're able to demonstrate, if you're going to go for what they call a quick read, which is what we're going for. So we're going for an early read. That would at least be a month. And then once you've done that, you then have to manufacture that drug. You have to get a facility that can manufacture it. They have to be licensed to manufacture that particular drug. You then have to get the raw materials to manufacture that drug. I mean, at the very quickest, you'll be looking at early next year, and that would be really quick.
Okay, so your country, UK, was saying something about this summer.
Yeah. But they have to. Okay, so I'm the Prime Minister of the UK. I'm not going to say, guys, we have this issue and, we're not going to get a vaccine for the next 6 months. So you come out with what the scientists will tell you, and they will tell you. So when they tell you that it's going to be available in 6 months, what they're saying is they may have approval for a vaccine. It doesn't mean the vaccine itself will be ready. It's just not possible.
Okay, I see.
But it's in the choice of words. They would not, so they'll just say there'll be a vaccine available. And then if you press them.
So an approval for a vaccine, is that an approval to release it or an approval to test it?
No, that would be, it'll be approval to manufacture. So you would have had to have demonstrated in trials that it works.
Okay.
So what governments have done is they've changed the rules slightly. So you remember I talked about 3 phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. They've allowed people to combine 1 and 2. So remember I said you can choose people who already suffer from that ailment in your phase 1. So you would do safety and efficacy at the same time. And then with phase 3, what they've said is, well, instead of using thousands of patients, you can use hundreds. And with COVID-19, because of the nature of the disease, instead of studying for like 6 months to a year, you can study it for just a month. So even if you fast-tracked it, you are still looking at 2 or 3 months before you get a readout that says your drug works. And then you get then you submit the dossier again to the regulators who have to review it and then give you approval. And then you start with the manufacturer. So it's very unlikely to be we're already in the summer, so it's obviously hasn't happened yet.
Okay, thank you. So here's some questions. Let's see. Someone said, I have a million questions about COVID-19, but let me ask this first. Is nose covering very safe for our health? Does it not have any negative effect on our health?
Okay, so I'm not a doctor, so I probably can't answer that question. But from the nose covering does one of 2 things. It prevents you from picking something up from somebody else, and it also prevents you from infecting someone. What I would say, however, just from a simple hygiene point of view, if you're wearing that same nose covering for about a week, maybe not good for you.
Okay, so wash it. Or use a disposable one.
Yes, or use a disposable one. Yeah.
I mean, WHO just came out. Was it yesterday? They finally came out and said that you should actually use it.
Effect to it. Yes.
Yeah.
It is because you see the thing is I practice certain things. So if I'm walking past people, I go running a lot. So if I'm running past someone who's running. Now that person is going to be breathing heavily. They've got. So I give them, I don't do 2 meters of separation. I do like 4 meters of separation. If it's someone who's just walking casually, I give them 2 meters of separation because they're not going to be breathing. If you think about a droplet that potentially is being emanated from someone who's say infected, if you assume they're infected, it's going to travel a certain distance because particles don't just drop. They travel a certain distance, but they will drop at a certain point depending on the particle size and the force at which you push out that particle. So if someone looks relatively fit and they're not breathing too heavy, then the chances are they're not breathing too hard, and therefore they're not going to be chucking those particles out at you. But in an enclosed space, you will have loads of people who are probably infected. Like I said, the estimation at this point is that about 80% of people are asymptomatic. So there are probably loads of people who are chucking out this virus who don't know. So there is some value to using the face mask. I would recommend it if people want to use it. If that's what
thank you for that.
Yes.
Right now we have so many people who are protesting on the streets in the US and actually across the world. And some people are not even wearing face masks. And all of the, this social distancing is out, they're not being implemented. People are just basically in the crowd together. What are your thoughts about that? Oh, did I lose you?
I saw that on TV this afternoon. I was a bit. No, I'm here.
Okay, I can't. It looks like. Okay, go ahead. You're okay. Go ahead.
So yeah. So I saw that this afternoon. I was quite surprised that people were doing that. But the majority of people that I saw were actually covered. The truth of the matter is, you may or may not have heard of something called herd immunity. And in my head, I thought to myself, well, okay, some people will probably pick it up. They won't be exposed to too much of the virus, and hopefully their body will be able to fight whatever it is they're exposed to. So there will be some people who actually will benefit from that because they'll be exposed to enough of the virus, just enough for their body to be able to react to it, but not enough to cause disease. So some will benefit from it. Remember, again, always remember, this is biology. We're talking about the systems. So some people might get infected today and or ultimately get ill. Hopefully, my hope is for the majority of people who I saw were wearing face masks, they would have been protected from, what would be out there. But it wasn't. I think they also had to think about their own lives. It was probably ill-advised, but.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Herd immunity. Okay, so then we have, how does diabetic, blood pressure, etc., increase COVID death?
It's they're very simple. Without going into the detail of biology, if you just accept a very simple explanation that whenever you have what they call this underlying illnesses, your body's ability to fight infection is reduced. I said earlier on that it's almost like when you fall ill. So I suffer from cold sores every so often. They just show up. That's a viral infection. Now what happens is when I'm mega stressed at work over a period of time, then they show up. The reason for that is because my body's immune response is weakened because my body in itself is overstressed. Now, if you have underlying conditions, they ultimately it's either one of two things. Either the medication you're taking is suppressing your body's ability to fight infection, or your body itself is not functioning optimally to fight infection, and that's just what it is. So ultimately, those conditions have some effect on your immune response to the presence of the virus, and therefore the virus is able to, affect you that much more.
All right. So people are saying that since there's no treatment per se, there's really no treatment or government sanctioned treatments right now. So people are saying the best thing we can do is to build our own immunity. And they're saying things like, take vitamin C, take vitamin D's and all of these vitamins. And okay, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so interesting. So there was a very popular video on Facebook some time ago, and I wasn't going to respond to it. This is the thing that I work from what you would call the regulated pharmaceutical industry. Now, when you're making a medicinal claim, you have to have demonstrated it with a trial. The problem with most of these things like vitamins and all of these supplements and stuff like that, they're not classed as medicines because they haven't had to go through a trial. Now, I can't sit here and say they don't work, but I cannot also sit here as a qualified person. If I was working in my professional capacity, I cannot release something like vitamin C for use against this. Now, I'm not, like I said, everyone knows vitamin. Well, I say everyone knows, it's generally accepted that vitamin C helps your immunity. So the way I see it, if it works for you, all well and good. So if you want to take them, I won't say don't take them, but you won't get a scientist who will tell you with any scientific, with any amount of data that says that those things work, because that's why they're not classed, they're classed as food supplements and not medicines.
Okay, so, but yeah, okay, good. But it doesn't mean, I like the way you said it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work. You just don't have any scientific basis,
Exactly, to say that.
you know, to put the weight around it. Does that make, is that,
Exactly.
is that what I'm hearing? Okay,
Yeah, that is
so
what you're hearing. So
Madagascar organic cure for COVID. What's your take on that?
I don't even know what that is.
Did you hear about it?
Okay. No, I didn't.
Oh, there was this whole thing about, they had a cure in a bottle, and it was a whole bunch of herbs, I think, and they had put the, and they swore that it worked.
And it probably does. This is okay. I tell a very, very quick story. My grandmother was a bit of a herbalist. So if you said she had a garden behind her little hut, if you told her you had something wrong with you, she'll go there, get a collection of weeds, and boil it for you. It always tasted horribly bitter, but it worked. It always worked. Now, before I left Nigeria, there was a professor of biochemistry who actually researched a lot of these herbal preparations and actually showed that they contained a lot of what we use in what you would call your current modern day medicines. Unfortunately, those things weren't documented. A lot of, I mean,
Exactly.
when my grandmother died, my dad was very regretful. Like, he wished he got her to document these things. I mean, I went to Nigeria just last year and I went to visit my grandma, and her garden, or her herbal garden, is still there. But I looked, to me, it was just a bush. But for her, that was medicine. So I again, I can only speak to you from the way that I work, which is I cannot say anything works without scientific data. If it works, but the way to prove it is this: if those people have been taking those medicines over thousands and thousands of years, they're not stupid. It must have
Absolutely.
worked. So in some sense, it has actually gone through the phases of trials. We just haven't documented it enough for me to be able to go to the FDA and say, look, my grandmother made this thousands and thousands of years ago. It's been working forever, so it must be effective. They want to see raw data, which I don't have. We don't have for those things. So I won't badmouth any of them. If you take it and it works for you, keep taking it.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I think that herbs are valid, and I just think if scientists have money behind them, and the only reason why we don't really have data, honestly, is because there's nobody putting money behind it for us, for you guys to study it. If somebody
Correct.
came, if the Nigerian government, for example, came and said, hey, look, we have X amount of money, we want you to go look at these herbs and study them and put them through the scientific process.
I
Well,
would
you
love to do
would,
something like that.
exactly. What did you
So
say?
I said I would love to do something like that. And the other thing one thing I was going to say is this: like, I cannot take chloroquine, like the refined chloroquine, because my body reacts to it. But when I take my grandmother's one, which sometimes I've had to take as a matter of last resort, one of medicine that actually contains chloroquine but is natural, I can drink gallons. Well, I can't drink gallons of the stuff because it's bitter. But if, say, let's assume I drank gallons, I don't react to it at all, because it's natural. It hasn't been refined and gone through all these processes. So they're actually better for you. We just need data and things to make it work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. My grandma was the same way. She had herbs for everything, and they worked, you know.
Exactly.
So, and then somebody said, "Oh, wait." He said, "What? You didn't hear about that?" Well, I think you already addressed it. Okay. Is there any? Do we have any questions on YouTube? Please, let me know. Bingpay, let me see. Let me know if we have any questions on YouTube. We only have a few minutes left. We only have a few minutes left, and I think that you've addressed the vaccines and when we should expect them, but you said there is no date, so we're all just hoping.
Yeah.
Now,
yes, exactly.
there's no date, but there's been theories about a second wave of COVID coming in the fall during the flu season. What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Again, it goes back to this thing about biology. Unfortunately, some people were criticizing the British government, and I suspect some other governments about their reaction to the whole COVID-19 infection thing. Now, the thing is, we have a lot of epidemiologists and people who study the way diseases are transmitted. A lot of what they've done are mathematical models on computers and stuff, but this is real life. And human beings behave different from the way computers would project that they would behave. So is there a possibility of a second wave? Of course there is, because what happens is around that's the flu season, the you have the flu where people would normally would end up eventually catching the flu virus. But one of the reasons for that is because of this idea of proximity, the fact that we're probably, we're not protected from it. So you have people who are asymptomatic. So I don't get the flu. I very rarely get flu. In fact, I keep thinking that when I'm close to death, I'm going to donate my body to science and find out why I never catch colds, because I tend not to. But the thing is, but I could catch, I might have it, and maybe it's asymptomatic and spread it. So there is a possibility of a second wave. But again, it's all lots of projections by various epidemiologists. I've read some who said it's not possible. I've read through their modeling, and I don't think it will happen. But
Okay.
I could. That's my personal conviction. That's not saying that it won't. I'm just saying from what I've studied and what I've read, I don't expect it to happen. Partly
Yeah.
because the things we're doing to prevent ourselves from catching COVID-19 will also prevent us from catching the cold virus and therefore or the flu virus. And so I don't think it will happen. But
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Well, mine is, there's all these people on the streets. There's no more social distancing in the United States. So I'm just giving it 2 weeks. I'm trying to look at 2 weeks and see what happens after 2 weeks. Because if nothing happens after 2 weeks, then exactly what you said about herd immunity has taken place then. Would have taken place.
You're correct. And actually, in some sense, the one good thing that would have come out of those demonstrations today is if like you say, within 2 to 4 weeks, if there isn't a spike, it'll be very difficult for the government to argue this idea of social distancing, because people will point to the
Yeah.
fact that we had all these millions of people out, 4 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and nothing happened.
And nothing
So
happened.
yeah, so this might actually be so George Floyd may have done something else for us. He may have actually released us from the curse of social distancing.
From COVID-19.
Yes,
All right.
exactly.
Final question is: as a microbiologist, is constant washing of hand with soap not eradicating bacteria meant to boost our immune system?
To you.
Answer. Oh, did we lose you? You're frozen. Can you is it just me?
No, it's not just you, but he's going to come back in a minute. He's done that before.
Okay.
Correct. That's a difficult one, because did you lose me?
We lost you. Okay. Maybe you were answering the question, but we didn't hear it. You were frozen.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me
now? We can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was saying, yes, there is. Okay, perfect. So the whole thing about hand washing, there is a point to which you can overdo it, because again, there is no way of knowing whether if you don't wash, the level to which you have to wash your hands to give yourself immunity. So I would say maybe don't obsessively wash your hands, but yes, if you've done something really, I don't know, like if you've gone gardening, for example, please wash your hands. But if you've just gone out and you've done your regulars, you've driven your car, come back home, you don't necessarily have, I would admit that I do, but you don't have to. There's a point beyond at which you can overdo it, and you then become excessively exposed, or your ability to be immune to those potential infections is reduced. So I would say, if you do anything where so say for example you go shopping and you've pushed a trolley where loads of people have touched, go home and wash your hands. That's just good practice. I wouldn't go from that to go and eat a KFC or some burger and grab that in my same hands. That doesn't work. But if you've just done things within your house, you don't have to wash your hands every 20 minutes in your house. there's just no point.
Okay. All right. Do we have any? I think that's the last question. We are. I think it's time. Thank you so much, Aya, for spending this hour with us. It's been enlightening. We appreciate it. hopefully you'll come back again. Thank you. You guys can unmute yourself. You can type in if you learned anything or appreciate the speaker, please. Let's see.
Thanks for having me around as well. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks for having me around as well. If people contact you and they have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But but it's been nice to talk to people here at least.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We learned a lot. It was a great. And now I know I'm free for reading every piece of paper in my drug when I get them out from the pharmacy.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Please do. A lot of work and effort actually goes into generating those, and they're actually approved as well, along with the medicine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they always update. They update them.
Yes, and they're regularly updated. You're correct.
Yes, it's updated.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. You're getting, people are clapping for you over there. Thank you so much. You guys, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.